12 points. And on his decision to send the U.S. Marines into LA, it's even worse. The American public disapproves of that by a 23-point margin. And it keeps.
We've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th.
Have you ever watched a democracy slowly bend into the shape of a dictatorship without a single shot fired? Because that's exactly what's happening right now in America, and Donald Trump isn't even hiding it. When Donald Trump returned to office in January 2025, many people hoped, foolishly perhaps, that his second term would be less chaotic than the first. But instead of learning from his past mistakes, Trump came back with a vengeance. This time, he came to rule, not govern. And last week, something terrifying happened. The US Supreme Court, led by a conservative majority, effectively handed Donald Trump a new weapon. In a 6-3 decision, the court stripped federal judges of the power to stop Trump's executive orders across the entire country. That's not just a court case, that's a quiet legal revolution. And it's dangerous.
The weak and unpopular conservative Supreme Court surrendered some key powers from the judicial branch over to King Donald and the executive branch. I'm going to get into all of that with a lot of smart people and what it all means in just a moment. And look at why the Supreme Court found itself on the road to enabling Trump's MAGA agenda in the first place. I mean, how'd they even get here? Trump's policies are widely unpopular, and I mean across the board. Just take immigration. That was once his strength. The American public disapproves of Trump's actions by a 16-point margin. You can see it on the screen. The American public disapproves of Trump's actions by a 20-point margin. On his decision to send the National Guard into Los Angeles, he's underwater by 12 points. And on his decision to send the U.S. Marines into LA, it's even worse. The American public disapproves of that by a 23-point margin. And it keeps going on. I'm giving you a few more. On the economy, Trump is underwater by 17 points. Goes the same for trade. He's underwater there by 17 points too.
Let that sink in. America's highest court just voluntarily gave away its ability to check the president's power. Why? Because the man in charge wears a red tie and demands loyalty over a law. Now let's rewind a little. How did we even get here? Despite holding office again, Trump's agenda is deeply unpopular. According to the latest Quinnipiac poll, Americans disapprove of his decisions on immigration, the economy, even the military presence in Los Angeles. Across the board, he's underwater. But instead of adjusting to public opinion or working with Congress, Trump is ruling with the stroke of a pen, through executive orders. That's not democratic leadership. That's autocratic obsession.
He prefers to rule like a strongman, demanding with a version of a MAGA wand that his orders be carried out by the stroke of a pen. And at this point, he knows he can get away with it because the Republican Party surrendered its power to Donald Trump a very long time ago. And the institution of Congress, another branch of government under Republican control, has surrendered much of its power too. So the only institutional bulwark against Trump's autocratic impulses has been the third branch of government, the courts. And as Trump has pushed the limits of his power, the courts have had to check him over and over again, largely the lower court, issuing nationwide injunctions to halt his executive orders as they decide what authority he actually has under the Constitution. In fact, Trump's actions have been so extreme, the courts have had to use that power to stop him more than any other president in modern history. And that's something that even Trump himself admits.
We've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th.
And the worst part? It's working because the Republican Party, the courts, and even Congress have surrendered their roles as guardrails. Trump no longer needs to compromise. He doesn't even pretend to. This is not about political disagreements. This is about power, unchecked, unfiltered, and unchallenged. And if you love this country, if you believe in freedom, then you should be deeply alarmed. Not because you're anti-American, but because you care about what America is supposed to be. As a woman watching all of this unfold, I don't feel safe. Not because I fear the people, but because I fear what happens when powerful men stop playing by the rules. If you think President Trump is spending his days working with Congress, building unity, or trying to bring the country together, think again. Because the truth is, Trump isn't interested in governing like a president. He wants to rule like a king. And his favorite weapon? Executive orders. Instead of passing laws through Congress, the way a democracy is supposed to work, Trump just signs his name and declares it done. From immigration crackdowns to banning diversity programs, Trump is using executive power like a shortcut around the system.
And sure, I mean, even with the MAGA lemmings in the Republican House and Senate, maybe that is a factor with some of Trump's agenda, maybe. That is not entirely why Trump uses executive orders. That's not his motivation. He uses them because he has no interest in building consensus, no interest in forming coalition, no real interest in winning people over beyond the MAGA core base. I mean, he really hasn't even tried to push the bulk of his agenda through Congress at all, aside from the big ugly bill. That's not going so well currently.
Think about that. A real leader listens, builds bridges, finds compromise. Trump, he skips all that because he knows Congress won't back his extreme policies. So instead of leading with the will of the people, he forces his will on the people. But here's where it gets worse. This isn't just about a lazy president avoiding hard work. It's about a man who craves unchecked control. Trump isn't even trying to pass laws anymore. He's using executive orders to push through policies that he knows the majority of Americans reject. For example, his decision to send us Marines into Los Angeles was met with huge backlash. On that move alone, the American public disapproved by a 23-point margin. And his immigration actions? Even worse, a full 20-point disapproval. These aren't small differences. These are nationwide rejections. But Trump doesn't care because he doesn't need your support. Not anymore.
He's barreled ahead with it anyway, thanks in large part to his absolute obsession with executive orders. Now, I'm not suggesting he's the first president to use them. He's not at all. But often the reason a president turns to executive orders, especially once they get past the first couple of weeks of their term, is because they've calculated that they can't get Congress to pass their policies into law.
Why bother with democracy when a pen and paper can get you whatever you want? It's not just selfish, it's dangerous. Executive orders were never meant to be the main tool of leadership. They're supposed to be temporary measures, not permanent replacements for real legislation. But Trump has flipped that idea upside down. He's using executive authority to dodge accountability, to silence opposition, to act without consent. And worst of all, he's creating a legal mess that the courts can barely keep up with. Every time a judge blocks his orders, he just writes a new one. It's a never-ending game of autocratic whack-a-mole. As a woman watching this unfold, I can't help but feel alarmed. Because when a leader avoids listening, avoids debate, and avoids the people, that leader is no longer serving the country. He's serving himself. And while Trump might think executive power makes him look strong, to the rest of us, it just looks like fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of facing the truth that America is not behind him. When we think of the Supreme Court, most of us imagine a final line of defense, a place where truth wins, where justice holds the powerful in check. But what happens when even that defense crumbles? That's exactly what happened just days ago, when the Supreme Court decided to hand Donald Trump a terrifying new advantage. In a 6-3 ruling split straight down ideological lines, the court ruled that federal judges can no longer block Trump's executive orders across the entire country. That's right. The very court that's supposed to protect the people just made it harder to do exactly that.
When the conservative majority on the Supreme Court decided that it too would surrender some of its power to Donald Trump. In a 6-3 decision split along ideological lines, the Supreme Court significantly curtailed the power of its own federal courts to stop a lawless president. Now, at the core of the case was one of Trump's most egregious executive orders, his decision to unilaterally end the long-standing precedent that anyone born on U.S. soil is an American citizen.
Let me break that down. If Trump signs an order that violates rights or targets specific groups, a federal judge can't stop it for everyone anymore. Now, those judges can only pause it for the states that filed the lawsuit. The rest of the country? They're on their own. This change doesn't just affect one policy, it changes everything. Birthright citizenship, voting access, diversity programs. All of it is now harder to defend because Trump's critics will have to fight him state by state. It's like trying to stop a wildfire with a garden hose. And the court didn't stop there. This wasn't just about narrowing legal tools. It was about empowering one man. Even Justice Sonia Sotomayor, in a powerful dissent, sounded the alarm.
Now, in a chilling dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, writing for the 3 liberal justices, wrote, "No right is safe in the new legal regime the court creates. Today, the threat is to birthright citizenship. Tomorrow, a different administration may try to seize firearms from law-abiding citizens or prevent people of certain faiths from gathering to worship. The rule of law is not a given in this nation nor any other. It is a precept of our democracy that will endure only if those brave enough in every branch fight for its survival." In every branch, that's a key part. Today, the court abdicates its vital role in that effort.
Think about that. A Supreme Court justice warning us that law itself is now at risk. That's not politics. That's a constitutional crisis. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson added that this ruling effectively creates a zone of lawlessness where Trump can ignore the rules and act as he pleases while the rest of us are left to suffer the consequences. And here's the truth. The majority of Americans didn't ask for this. They didn't vote for weaker courts. They didn't want to see the presidency turn into a throne. But this decision is proof that Trump isn't just reshaping policy, he's reshaping power. And the court, instead of pushing back, just handed him the keys. As a young woman who still believes in the values of justice and fairness, I can't help but feel betrayed. Not just by the man in office, but by the system that was supposed to protect us from him. But there's still hope. And it starts with awareness. Because the more people who understand what's really happening, the harder it will be for Trump to keep rewriting the rules behind closed doors. This isn't just about Trump anymore. It's about the people who refuse to let him destroy what's left of American democracy. The Supreme Court may have limited the power of judges, but it hasn't killed the power of the people. In fact, something incredible is happening. Across the country, ordinary Americans are doing what the institutions failed to do, standing up to Trump together. We've seen it everywhere. Protesters flooding the streets, lawyers racing to file lawsuits in state after state, organizers creating massive networks to fight back against Trump's policies, not just in blue states, but in deep red districts too.
It is possible that we will look back on today's ruling as the day when the fight against Trump in the courts and the fight against Trump in the streets became one and the same. And I am not saying it's going to be easy. It's going to be hard. But we always knew this was going to be hard.
Let that sink in. The battle lines are no longer just drawn in courtrooms. They're drawn on sidewalks, town halls, even immigration offices, anywhere Trump's orders are being enforced. One reason this resistance matters is because of how the Supreme Court's ruling left a tiny crack in the legal door. Justice Kavanaugh, yes, that Kavanaugh quietly wrote that people can still bring lawsuits as large class actions. Meaning if we organize, if we gather enough impacted people, we can still block Trump's orders nationwide. But it won't be easy. It requires deep coordination, fast response, and fearless determination.
People can still ask the courts to block Trump's policies across the entire country if they can manage to do the hard organizing work of finding big groups of people who will be negatively impacted by them and getting them to come out.
So that's where we are now. A fight, not just against Trump, but for the soul of this country. And while institutions may be compromised, the people are not. Not yet. We've seen brave resistance, from immigration lawyers who shield families to local communities who fight deportations, from students walking out of classrooms to faith groups protecting those being targeted. And women, especially young women, are leading so much of this fight because we understand what's at stake. We know this isn't just about politics. It's about rights, dignity, and a future that's slipping away the longer Trump goes unchecked. As a woman, I'm proud to be part of a generation that refuses to be silent. We're not just observers. We're the opposition. We're not waiting for institutions to save us. We're saving each other. So if you're watching this thinking, what can I even do? Start here. Start by staying informed. Start by supporting those organizing on the ground. Start by sharing videos like this. Because awareness is power. And power, when shared by the people, is something Trump still can't sign away.